This meeting of the board is now called to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening, and we'll get started by approving our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Nothing for me.
Is there a motion, please, on page 2?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Kurt. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Terry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes, and we'll proceed with our agenda. And our first item, as always, is the superintendent's report. Mark?
Thanks, Randy. We have 3 updates for you today. The first is on our bond project update. Mr. Edwards will take care of this for us.
Thank you, Superintendent Beelang, as well as members of the Board of Education. Just want to give you updates related to closing out some of our 2015-2019 projects, as well as our start in our planning phases of 2021. So just a reminder that we have 2 projects in progress. The storage barns at the northern campus and also the high school auditorium floors, the refresh. The barns that are designated for Northern High School, that particular barn, the siding has been completed, the doors have been installed. For the middle school barn, not much has changed over time. It has been framed and it has its roof on it. The next phase is obviously to have the siding put on the barn as well as the doors installed. For the high school auditorium projects, the next phase will start in December or January, and that will include the speaker replacement, the projectors, and then some lighting and cabling. Moving to our 2021 bond, over the past 2 weeks since our last board meeting, we've had several design meetings with the representatives from Tower, Pinkston, and Fielding International. We've covered a number of topics with different individuals within the district. We met with both principals of Central and Haverhill, Mr. Zantz as well as Ms. Wagoner. We discussed the learning communities, the educator workshop area, which is a space for teacher collaboration. We discussed the heart or the center of the school as you enter into the schools, as well as the gatherings there. Both principals offered suggestions and ideas that can be incorporated into the design. We also met with Susan Livingston, who's our Director of Dining Services. She provided valuable insight on the inner workings of the kitchen, along with the needs for food service, all of our code requirements, and inspections for the health department. Lastly, last Friday, we held our 5th design development meeting. We discussed the playground, civil engineering, landscape design, and interior architecture. We're approximately at the 65% mark in what we call design development. Next week, we will have small group meetings with the specials teachers. That would include physical education, art, music, as well as the media specialists. And then lastly, we also want to meet with our cafeteria staff to talk about the flows beyond the kitchen requirement. So that includes my update tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
I went to look at the barns today on my way this way,
Okay.
and will they be insulated, or are they just going to be steel on the outside?
Yeah, it'll be pretty much steel on the outside.
Okay, so no insulation, it's just
Nothing fancy.
just a pole barn type of thing?
Correct.
Okay. And then, what's the delay? I mean,
So the largest delay has been just the workforce.
okay,
So as materials have come in and people have committed to our work, if those timelines get off and then they have other commitments, one of our particular subcontractors lost a crew of people to a competing firm. So it's been mostly the labor force right now.
okay. Because the steel is sitting there and all that
Yes.
stuff, and it shouldn't take that long to put up, and you
All
wouldn't think, right?
That's correct. All the supplies are within town,
Okay.
but it's the labor force that we're encountering right now.
Johnny, just
Yes.
real quick on the storage barns, my perspective sometimes in the business is I give my guys more space and they save more stuff. And so hopefully you have a policy where people aren't just saving stuff because they have someplace to put it.
Absolutely. I don't know if we have a policy, but.
But yeah, somehow you
yes.
gotta police that because I'm like, oh boy, there's some stuff.
That is correct. The Northern High barn is to, replace some of that area outside of the auditorium. And then the North Middle School barn is again to kind of help with some storage. But yes, it'll be critical for our administrators and staff to play nice in the sandbox and
Yeah.
keep those spaces nice, clean, and usable, because the last thing we want to do is have so much stuff in there that you can't find the things you're looking for when you need it. So, yes. Any other questions for the board?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The financial report today will be provided by Sammy Stevens. Sammy's our business manager and is filling in for Paula. Paula's taking a little time off after working on the audit. Sammy?
Good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Beeling. In your board packet this evening is the financials ending September 30th of 2022 compared to September of 2021. The first page is broken out by function code. Just a reminder that we don't receive state aid in October. We rely on property tax collection and other miscellaneous revenue that comes in. You'll see that local revenue is up, and that is primarily due to property taxes and athletic gate receipts. The state revenue is down, and that's because last year we had carried forward some ESSER supplemental funding that we had received the prior year. And then federal funding is up, and that's from carryover from the Child Care Stabilization Grant that Curious Kids received last spring. Under expenses, in instruction area, the basic programs are up. A lot of that is due to one-time expenses through ESSER 3. One is summer school that we were able to take out of ESSER 3, and then Chromebook purchase out of ESSER 3 as well. And we're also seeing an increase in subbing costs. In added needs, that is up as well. We're seeing some increase in ESI and at-risk supplies because of the change in the purchasing protocol, along with increase in EFE software for the year. Under supporting services, the general administration area is up, and that's due to invoice payments for purchase services. The business area is up, and that's strictly due to an increase in salary and benefits. Child care services is up substantially, and a lot of that is due to the Child Care Stabilization Grant that they had received, and that's been able to provide new classroom supplies and materials for the kids, along with some staff stipends for the Curious Kids employees. And then central services is down, and a lot of that relates to ESSER funding and one-time purchases that we made last year that aren't being carried forward. Page 2 is split by object code. Purchase services is down, and that also that relates to the payroll for Curious Kids being down, and that's because we're no longer offering that before and after school care program, and then as well as ESSER funded purchases that were a one-time purchase not being carried forward. Supplies are down, and that's because of Chromebook purchases out of coronavirus relief funds and ESSER supplemental funding. As for general updates for the business office, count day was October 5th. We'll start reconciling that soon, and that's due to the state on the 16th of November. And then we also finalized the audit within the last couple of weeks. The audit committee will be meeting at 5 p.m. on November 7th before the normal board meeting, and then the audit will then be presented that evening at the board meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thanks, Sammy.
And our final report is a 97C update, and Dr. Pasco will tell you a little bit about what that is and introduce those that will be presenting.
Okay. Good evening, Superintendent Beeling and trustees. Tonight we have a couple special guest presenters. Dr. Mackenzie Sheehan is here with us. She's our multi-tier systems of support and curriculum district supervisor, as well as Ann Gordon, our educational support and intervention supervisor for elementary and high school. And they're here to talk about 98C, so Section 98C, which is a grant under the ESSER 2 funding source umbrella. And that's specifically related to addressing learning loss. We're looking at utilizing this per pupil funding source to support our mathematics at the secondary level and some initiatives moving forward. So I don't want to steal any of their thunder, so without further ado, ladies, come on up.
Thank you, Dr. Pasco. Board, Superintendent Beeling, thank you for having us tonight. We are here representing a collaboration between our departments, and what we're going to talk to you about is this opportunity that we have to apply for this grant money. And to apply for this grant money, we have to have an outline that at least shows how we would use the funding. And this grant money could also be used with other funding sources like ESSER II.
Okay, so over the last few years, we've been watching our data in mathematics, and we have seen a growing need for different kinds of instruction and additional intervention. So you see the graphs here from middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. With our comparator districts, you see the state average there for students who were proficient on the M-STEP. And then in the circles, that represents the number of students who qualified as economically disadvantaged for each of those districts.
And so really what we've been doing is tracking the data very closely, and it's showing us both in our data and then across the nation that mathematics has taken a significant hit due to the pandemic. But this is an area that we've wanted to grow in for years, is our mathematics. And so what we've done is we've put together an outline of how we would go about using these funds to impact mathematics. So you'll see our main way of doing this is what we call learning acceleration. That's really giving us the opportunity to be with students and to accelerate their learning rather than pulling them out of a classroom setting and remediating their learning or trying to catch them up. And so instead what we do is we target these certain specific times, being in school, outside of school, and during summer. And so we have some strategic moves that we're going to just quickly address, and then there's a little bit more in your board packet. If we were to receive this grant funding, then we would actually detail out all the plan, and that would be something that would be available for all of you to view as well as put up on our website. So our first one is, one of the things that we would like to do with this grant money is hire a middle school instructional specialist or coach. One thing that we know about just coaches and bringing in a person to work with staff one-on-one is that it's the most powerful form of professional development. So really to make an impact, a long-term impact on all of our students is really taking our teachers and giving them the professional development and that coaching that they need in order to improve their practice and really understand how to target mathematics for individual students. So that would be one of the ideas for this plan.
And then the next thing that you'll see there is the teachers within our educational supports and intervention department will be engaging in some training with a math recovery program. Math recovery is an early numeracy program that supports teachers learning and how to teach early numeracy. So beginning the end of November, we will have almost half or a little bit more than half of our teachers within the educational supports and intervention department will participate in 4 days of training in a first cohort, and then we're hoping later in the winter and spring, the second cohort will be able to attend. We also have about half of our middle school ESI teachers will attend in this first cohort as well.
And really, all of this will be addressed and looked at through our data review process, which I know you've heard a little bit about in the past, but it's really taking our screening data and any other data that we have, whether it's state or national, and looking at it with our buildings and our principals, and then them taking it to their staffs and really digging in and asking the hard questions around what's our next step? What does this mean for us? So using that in a program evaluation, we would come together and really look at, is what we're doing within this plan actually working or making an impact, or what adjustments do we need? This all too, through this program evaluation, we would look at, can this be scaled? Can we start looking at, what does this look like at high school? What does this look like at elementary? Those items that are making the biggest impact. So that would be part of it as well.
The other targeted timeframe we would look at is before and after school tutoring. So we would be doing some progress monitoring with the students who might receive those services. That would be something that once this funding would come in, which Dr. Shane could talk about when that would come in, we would design a program to address those needs and have the students access the before or after school tutoring.
And then our last time frame that we would really take some time to plan and look at is something that we already do, but haven't necessarily targeted in this way. And that is our summer learning programs. So we would really want to look at specifically middle school and how we could draw in more students to be able to be involved in that and really concentrate on that foundational math and problem-solving strategies that they can apply. So that would be really the focus, and then we would also integrate the math recovery strategies that we've learned throughout the year, as well as using the progress monitoring tool to actually measure impact of that summer learning program. So all of these, again, are outlined ideas that we feel like if we could get the funding that we could utilize these. The one thing about the funding is that it's a short-term one. So we get it and we would have to use it by the end of the year, so by July. So it's a fast and furious. But the state is really encouraging us to pair this with ESSER money, and that if there's things that we want to see over time grow, to look at how we could marry those together. And then lastly, just the evaluation of the whole initiative. And I kind of spoke to this, but these would be the ways that we would look at evaluating the impact and deciding if we need to scale to elementary or to or to high school.
And we gave you a little snapshot of the mathematics data tonight. Next month, Dr. Pasco will be giving you a lot more information about monitoring progress.
Monitoring report 1-1
Sorry,
for middle
progress
school.
monitoring of memory. So he will be talking a lot more about that next month.
And we're here for any questions you may have.
Is it $35 times our total population or middle school population, or what, how does that math work?
So 35 is the estimate that we're hearing thrown around right now. We don't actually know what the amount would be. I've heard higher numbers too, but it would be per pupil of our whole district.
So it's 35 is 300 grand, okay? So you're hoping to get this 300,000, and you're gonna develop a program to help these middle school kids out of that $300,000, but it has to be spent before this coming July.
That is correct. And
Okay.
so when evaluating what the most impactful and important thing, according to our data, we really felt like it was the middle school mathematics program.
And that coach you wanna hire, is that a temp, or how do you do that?
So those are some of the things we've started drafting and outlining, but with the hopes of getting the funding. And it would be a 3-year position. It would be a 3-year initiative at first that we would look at. And so we would go from using this initial funding to looking at using the ESSER funding to finish the additional 2 years.
Okay.
And that will be outlined, if we do receive the funding, we'll outline that, and that will be something that you'll be able to have access to and help us walk through.
So is the hope of the grant giver is that this short burst can really make a difference in a short amount of time, or is it just, the idea is it's seed money with a hope to do exactly what you're proposing in the future?
So I watched a couple of webinars about it so far, and I've heard both. I've heard that in one they were saying they were encouraging you to use other grant funding sources to continue what you had started. But then in another one, it sounded like it was just them giving us a quick dose of money. So, but there may not. It's a competitive grant, so there may not be as many people out there going for it just because the timeline's been so short.
And I assume middle school is targeted because that's kind of a critical, especially critical point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, did I hear you say you'd be monitoring the different interventions to assess which ones were more successful?
Right.
And then they may become targets for ongoing
Right.
funding?
Or growing through high school or through elementary.
Yep, we want to take whatever we're finding is most impactful and make sure we can replicate it at an appropriate level. So.
I was a little curious that with middle school, did you have an option? Could you have gone with elementary? I'm just thinking that if we have a big problem at the middle school level, it didn't just start there. And it didn't just start with a pandemic. And we've been, associating a lot of our problems with the pandemic. So if we are able to catch before they get to the place of giving up on math, I'm just curious why we chose the middle school. It's a
No, I'm glad you asked that
Yeah.
question. So something that we've done specifically this year is that elementary teachers are going through a process with what we're calling a FAME facilitator. It's a formative assessment trained facilitator that they are looking specifically at mathematics. So right now, we have just finished our curricular review cycle in elementary mathematics, and they're implementing some new strategies, and we've taken the priority standards and made sure that they're matching what research is saying. And so they're really getting into that implementation, and they have been over the last 3 years. So elementary has some major stuff going on that really we felt like we need something to support middle school, and we have this going on at elementary. So we feel pretty confident in the cycle that's going through. There are elements in this that we would really like to scale to elementary, but I think at this time, the most critical area to hit would be middle school because we don't have significant supports for them in mathematics.
In that math recovery that I mentioned, we have, likely by the end of this year, we'll have all of our special education teachers and title funded teachers will have been through that training.
For elementary.
Is that similar to reading recovery?
No, it's a different,
No, totally different.
Totally different.
organization, yeah.
Okay.
You know, the name.
Just the name, okay.
Right.
Okay, can I ask a technical question about the slide with the data and the bars on it? Can you
Maybe.
go back there?
You can ask, but
I
we might have
know,
to
it's
pass it
always
off to Dr.
dangerous.
Pasco for that one.
There you go. No, I didn't.
Yes.
So it's good, we've got the comparators up there, that's great. So the circle with the data for the, I would say, the economically disadvantaged kids. Does that represent the percentage of our kids that are economically disadvantaged? Or does it represent the math scores of the economically disadvantaged
The
kids?
percentage who are economically
Who
disadvantaged.
are economically disadvantaged?
And it's at that grade level, right? Because I know
Yes.
the percentages vary. So,
Yes.
so we rank
Yeah.
from low to high, like we do on our other monitoring reports as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, that's a great question, so.
And my last comment, I mean, it's just a reflection about grants in general. And I just think, all too often they come out, we go for them, you're lucky enough to get it. There's this sprint, there's this burst of activity, it ends, and life moves on to the next bright shiny object. And I mean, my reflection is to just, make sure you reflect on this, and really try to learn from it. And we could come up with some really cool things here that could make a difference. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, be sure to carve out some time so you can, it's gonna be a crush and, you're gonna be really busy with this, but, really focus on that reflection and there may be something really good and long-term that can come out.
No, and I
So this is
appreciate
exciting.
that, because we have been working with the middle school principals and their MTSS coordinators, and they've helped think about and develop some of this, but it's also part of our long-term 5-year plan for them, for middle school. So it's woven in there. So we are trying to address that, but I do agree sometimes we get going and then things get lost along the way, so.
Yeah. Well, and look forward in future monitoring reviews, look forward to watching that data, tick up and you reminding us where the intervention started. As a trustee, that'd be very exciting. Very cool.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate your focus in this area and going after the grant. And obviously, it's an area we need to focus on and improve. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Sit on the report.
Okay, we'll move to comments and communications. Our secretary, Dr. Celeste Shelton Harris, will read our rules for public participation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
The board welcomes community input at our board meetings and recognizes the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. To permit fair and orderly public expression, please conform to these guidelines when addressing the board. Attendees must register their intention to speak during the public participation portion of the meeting by completing the speaker registration form at the beginning of the meeting. Individuals may not register others to speak. Speakers will be recognized by the presiding officer and may not be called in the order in which they have been signed up to speak. Speakers are requested to state their name, address, and group affiliation if applicable. Limit comments to 3 minutes. Direct all comments to the board and not to staff or to other participants. Speakers may not yield any of their speaking time to others. Provide a written copy of your comments and supporting documentation to the board secretary if available. Present your comments in a respectful and professional manner to model the behavior expected of Portage students. Refrain from mentioning any student by name. Contact the superintendent directly regarding personnel matters. Board of Education meetings are held for the purpose of conducting the business of the school district and are not considered to become community meetings. Board members are not obligated to respond to issues raised during the public comment. Normally, such issues are referred to or followed up on by our administrators.
Thank you very much. We have 6 speakers tonight to talk about naming the football field, and we have one speaker that wants to introduce himself as a candidate. So I think we'll take you first, Mr. Ken Barnard, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ken Barnard. I'm running to be one of your next circuit court judges for this county. There are going to be 3 open seats for judges this fall, 2 of them in the circuit court for which I'm running. For 25 years, I have been an assistant prosecutor for this county and started each of my cases with the words, Ken Barnard, for the people. I've focused on a lot of crime prevention efforts, especially with our youth. I was the first ever prosecutor trained as a school liaison officer by the Michigan State Police, and I've worked closely with your school resource officers. My cases have focused a lot on child abuse and neglect cases, and I believe there's a lot of overlaps with what the school does and that the court can be a partner to the schools. I've helped many children testify about sexual abuse that they've had to endure. I've helped a lot of students who have faced educational neglect or other forms of neglect get in-home services, and I believe that I can help, and that's why I'm running. I could talk all night about my own children, but I want those same things for all of our children in this community. Perhaps that's why the teachers of the MEA have also endorsed me and recognized this desire of mine. So I just thank you for this opportunity to meet you. We will have a few new judges, and I wanted to introduce myself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Our next speaker is Eric Verheyen.
I hate to interrupt, but is that microphone supposed to be working? Because half the time.
It's not
for recording.
It's for recording purposes.
It's for recording purposes.
Oh, it's not.
We don't have an in-room sound system.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, welcome.
Well, good to see you again.
And you?
Eric Verheyen, 50314 Fulton Road, Leonidas, Michigan. I'm here today speaking in support of the dedication and consideration for Bob Knight Field. I'll start by saying that my opinion is biased. I've known Coach Knight most of my life as the dad to one of my closest K-12 friends and class of Portage Central 84 graduates, Dave Knight. I've also had the privilege to experience him as a student going to Portage Central and later as a colleague when I worked here for a career as a teacher, a varsity coach myself, and a union president. I've had family dinners with Bob and Noni over the years, including some of the most cherished ones the weeks prior to his passing, when Dave was here visiting from Europe. I was blessed to have been able to go into his home and shake his hand, express my gratitude one last time the afternoon prior to Bob's death. He couldn't speak, he's bedridden, but he still had his wits, his humor was there, the grip of steel handshake still there, and a smile that I couldn't help but when I quipped a line from one of our favorite jokes we'd shared. He was a good man. It's been about 65 years or more since someone was worthy of having a dedication consideration. Bob Knight is that man. He's that coach, that educator, and that community leader. It is no insult to Mr. McCandley, but he never directly impacted the lives of as many residents as Coach Knight. My family has a history of educators for Portage dating back to the 1950s. We've sent 5 children through K-12, though none of us played football. We all had our lives positively impacted by Bob Knight. Where are the community voices of opposition to this? It seems it's solely a Board of Education trustee issue to acknowledge the obvious on this one. Bob Knight deserves this honor. Those that have known Coach Knight over his career as a leader have seen his impact. I'd suggest if the question is of one of policy, that what was lacking in the current policies that were in place when McCandley Field was dedicated? I've learned that maybe there wasn't a policy at that time and it just occurred. Hostler Hill, I know that some have said, well, that wasn't the same thing at all. It was a well-deserved naming, and I was glad to see it happen. That did set a precedent, however, when it was acknowledged. The only difference now is the significance of the contributions and the correspondingly significant honor by the board to acknowledge as much. If the concern is the next time, then the easy solution is to use Bob Knight's life accomplishments and dedication to Portage schools as the standard, a standard that many in our own administration wouldn't even meet. Home residency within the school district boundaries. This was always a requirement of previous superintendents, yet I believe with Mr. Beeline, to my knowledge, has never been a resident of this community. That policy was quickly altered and a decision was made to hire him. There were no committees, we didn't wait a year to do it. If you want to have a standard, have somebody who's worked as a career educator at Portage Schools for 3 decades or more, who has been the head coach of a successful varsity program for decades, who's been the MHSAA Coaching Hall of Fame, who's been selected by his peers as an 8-time Regional Coach of the Year, who's the winner of the Crowley Award or the equivalent in their respective sports, to have been the state postseason playoffs X number of years in the finals as well, to have won 14-plus conference championships, to have been a member of the respected high school staff's Hall of Fame for their high school, to have X number of former athletes, Olympians, co-workers, students, doctors, community members step forth via petition or in person to support such a recommendation. To have a reputation that's unblemished by any other form of scandal, embarrassment that this district has and continues to have to deal with. See how many others could rise to the level of that scrutiny. Many in athletics today are leaving. The fans and parents can be brutal. The lack of support from administration or boards is frustrating. The long hours away from home and family have made the era of a 30-year coach a dying experience. Whatever the holdup and concerns the board has or should have, they should be very frank and clear with the community about what is defective in the policies that existed when this issue was first brought forth a year ago. Why there's a need for a community. Why a committee. Why a committee at all? There aren't so many trustees that this couldn't be discussed as one whole group in the process. Many wonder if it's purely circumstantial that many of you on the board are comprised almost entirely of trustees that reside within northern district boundaries. I, for one, would like to think that that is completely irrelevant and the community and the city work as one. People have also expressed concerns about many of the positions and influence within this matter perhaps didn't get the chance to experience the Coach Knight effect in their formative years to really fully understand and appreciate his impact on students and community. That's prevented them from being the vanguard of this movement. Perhaps they didn't know him when he was not just winning games and winning numerous trophies and awards for the MHSAA, but being a mentor to the students and the non-athletes, like myself, not a football player, or his larger impact as a teacher and mentor to those that never played football. Bob Knight did far more than coordinate a land deal decades ago. Bob Knight was in the trenches, the classrooms, the athletic fields, the stadiums. Perhaps there's a more reasonable approach to share his legacy. No one wants to see the name McCamley removed. Was it not the purpose and hope of McCamley that one day a staff member like Bob Knight would come along, move here to Portage, raise his family and children here, dedicate his life and career to the children of our community for several decades of loyal, selfless service? If our current board can't see that, perhaps you should step down, revisit what kind of person you are and what you value. Bob Knight raised 5 kids here. He worked an exemplary career for decades. He coached and enriched the lives of thousands. I know of no one that opposes his honor, sans this board. Your immobility is puzzling. The solution is to recognize Bob and enrich the name McCamley. Perhaps consider the Fields of McCamley Sports Complex, home to Bob Knight Field. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is Frank Galkowski.
Frank Galkowski, 412 Velvet Avenue. 1971, Bob Knight was hired by the Portage Public Schools to be their head football coach. The rumor was coming that this big, tough, gruff guy was coming from Muskegon, Michigan, and the program was abominable. There was no program. In fact, when Bob came here, there were several students that had played the year before that chose not to come out because they heard this guy was so gruff and mean. But anyway, Bob inherited a terrible, terrible program. I know, because I was there. I know what it was like to see those kids that really did not have an understanding of playing football. Bob Knight was not only a football coach, he was a teacher, he's a counselor, he's a dad to many players. He's made a super impact on hundreds of young men that went through Portage Central High School. He's been an ambassador for the Portage Public Schools. If you go to a football conference, the Michigan High School Football Coaches Association, if Bob is a speaker, he will be surrounded after he's done talking. If Bob is not a speaker, he will be surrounded from young men and present coaches that want to know, what have you done to be successful? Well, let's talk about success. Previous 5 years before Bob came here, Portage High School, Portage Central High School won 7 football games. The next 5 years, with Bob Knight at the helm, they won 15. They wanted to fire him. The headhunters were after him. There were petitions. However, one of the strong supporters of Bob Knight was a former superintendent by the name of Dr. George Conti. Dr. Conti felt strongly that Bob was going in the right direction with the program. The culture had to be changed in Portage. Why would captains go to an administrator to see if they had to practice on Saturday or if they had to practice on the Saturday of Labor Day weekend? Now, that's not a very dedicated football player. Bob took a bunch of kids from Portage, eventually, the culture had to change. The rough, gruff guys stayed rough and gruff, and he changed the culture. He went 1-8, 1-8, and the same kids that won 1-8 were 6-3 the next year. They started to buy into be the best that you can be, and to beat the best, you have to be the best. Bob taught life lessons to his football players. Portage Central did not have, over the years that I was affiliated with the program, did not have the most outstanding of football players. Yeah, we put one in the NFL. He was a Division III player in college. No Division I or II players wanted him. We've had a player at Michigan State, a handful at Western Michigan, some at Hope, some at K College, but overall, our players have been what most school districts would say average. But don't call those players average when they have been subjected to the teachings and coachings of Bob Knight and his staff. They become very, very tough competitors. They are expected to live up to the standards of Portage Central, Portage Public Schools, Portage Central High School. Don't discredit your school in any way. Teachers would come to Bob Knight and say that Randy Van Antwerp was giving that teacher problems. And at practice, Bob would say after practice, Randy, you're going to romance Old Blue for a while. And that was, Old Blue was a very, very heavy sled that you would run until you were quite almost exhausted. Or you were going to do 50s. Bob did not want the football players to be looked down in any way, and he expected them to be at a higher level as far as most other students went. He was very demanding. He was surrounded by a coaching staff that several of them could have got head coaching jobs wherever. However, they chose to stay with Bob Knight. In fact, there's one young man that played for Bob Knight in 1971 that is still coaching here in Portage at one of the middle schools. But most of the staff that stayed with Bob were here with him for between 20 and 30 years. And a couple of them have gone on to better things, Climax Scots, Frankfort, Michigan. But anyway, you know, I know the name Bob Knight does not mean a lot to some of you that weren't here or have had the context of what kids have experienced under Bob Knight's tutelage, because it was said by Eric that several of you are from the northern side. However, I don't mean to cast stones at Stuart McCamley. Stuart McCamley was on the Board of Education president, I think, maybe when it was Portage Township High School. And then it was Portage High School. He did, I'm not sure how the field was acquired, whether he bought it, he donated it, the school bought it, I have no idea. All I know is that at the time, Stuart McCamley did a good thing for the district. And so I have no quarrel with that. In fact, I have no quarrel with Stuart McCamley, period. However, I was at a football game Friday night, and there was a father of a former player at Lakeshore over on St. Joe. Son has not played football in Portage for 30 years, but he was there. Him and a group of guys, they go and watch Portage Central football. That didn't happen prior. Early on, Friday night lights at Portage Central were for about 250 middle school parents to drop their kids off and let them run all over hell for 2.5 hours and be chased by teachers and so on and so forth. That didn't happen. The community bought into the fact that they had a good coach. They had a gentleman that was very, very involved in the community, involved in his church, involved with the faculty of the high school, would be rather outspoken at times. Please understand, not everybody liked Bob Knight. If you had a really good talent and you were giving it a half an effort, you weren't going to get along with Bob until you put out 100%. That was the objective, and that was a team thing. You got to put out 100%, you got to be the best that you can be so that the team can be successful. So there are some kids, I'm social media. There are some things on there that says, I didn't like Bob Knight. But, well, of course, a year ago yesterday, Bob Knight passed away. October 1st, 2021, at McCamley Field, within a 1-week period, it was mentioned that Bob Knight had terminal brain cancer. And so Portage Central High School somehow got a tent put up, and the word of mouth spread. It spread to Washington, D.C., to other states around, and there were probably 250 plus former players that came down to say goodbye to their coach. So I don't know what the reluctance is. All I know is that there's grandfathers, maybe even a few great-grandfathers, fathers, and recent former players that if they see Bob Knight Field down there, their face will light up. They'll say, I knew that guy. That was my coach, that was my kid's coach, whatever. I don't understand the reluctance. All right, precedent. You don't want to set precedent, that's fine. Then use Bob Knight as the example of what it takes to get your name put on something. 40 years walking the sidelines, 230 football victories, 17 conference championships. Bob didn't treat that, every day was the same. We went out and coached the kids to be as good as they could be the next day. He didn't look back on championships or anything like that. He wanted to give his best to the kids that were in the program at this time. So I don't know what else I can say to tell you, to convince you that maybe, even though you may not know the history of Bob Knight, that there's a lot of people on this end of town that do. And I would implore you to look at Neola. You did some review of 5 or 6 years ago on your policies. I think there's probably a spot in there that says that you, as the Board of Education of the Portage Public Schools, can name something. Just make it so that people don't come out of the woods and say, well, my art teacher over there got awards for 3 years in a row. Well, how about 40? Make standards. Make standards that if somebody achieves that sort of success, they ought to have their name like Stuart McCamley, like Bob Knight Field, like whatever else where they've been successful and worked for 20 plus years doing something in an extracurricular activity. I've talked long enough. I don't hesitate to talk. I commend you for your work for the Portage Public Schools. And I am very confident that you will put forth the effort to form a committee or whatever else to set the stage to go forward with naming that football field Bob Knight Field. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Frank. Our next speaker tonight is Rick Grosser.
Can you put me to the end of these guys? Would that work for you, please?
That's fine.
Thank you, sir.
That's fine. Our next speaker is Ed Cardle.
Caudle, C-A-U-D-L-E.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, fine.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hello, everyone, board. I'm Ed Caudle, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 852 Bergen Farm Court. I'm a former player, Coach Knight, played for him for basically 2.5 years. I was asked to come down tonight because I've been hearing the last year, so the last 6 months, they're trying to change the stadium name. I want to first speak and say this is no disrespect to Mr. McCamley regarding the field already having the name. My biggest thing, I wanted to come down here and say what he meant to me. Not only was he a football coach to me, he was a football coach to guys sitting here, he was a football coach to guys I meet now that are younger than me, that honor Coach Knight and respect him for the man that he was and what he taught him to be as far as being young men. And I can think how he touched my life. I wouldn't have played at Grand Valley State University under Coach Kelly if I hadn't had Coach Knight pushing me to be the young man I was going to be and to continue to work hard every day. Not only did he push me as far as football, but he pushed me into school. He kept me in track on certain things I had to do, being responsible, being a respectful young man, as well as my parents raising me as well. But it was another dad to me when I came to school. So for me, it's more of an honor and respect because of everything that he's done, obviously for the community, and everyone spoke on that. I don't want to dig into that. But everything he's done for the community, everything he's done for not just the football team I want to speak on, is other kids and other sports within the school system, that he was constantly a mentor and constantly like a dad figure to a lot of men and women throughout our school system. So the last thing I'll say is I know there's a big thing with changing the name, and I don't know the political aspects of how the name gets changed, or there's no disrespect, again, to what the field is named now. But I do believe in life, things change. There's other stadiums, there's other venues, there's other things in this, and you can look across the country that have been renamed. And specifically, they've been renamed because someone else comes forth that shows that not to disrespect the person from before them, but it's a new time and day. And sometimes things do get changed as far as names. So I think we're all speaking in light of Coach Knight having his name out there because he's meant so much to me and several other people within the community and other athletes in the community. And I believe he deserves that. I was here, I was one of those guys who came. I got a call probably 3 days before saying, you know what, we're gonna have something for Coach. Coach is really sick. I hadn't seen Coach. I probably hadn't seen Coach in probably 5, 6 years. My parents would see him at the store and they'd always talk to him and he'd act like he'd seen him just yesterday. But I hadn't seen Coach. I remember this to this day. I walked to the tent, I looked at him, and I thought he was sick, so I didn't expect him to stand up. He looked at me like he'd just seen me yesterday. And I'm like, wow, like, Coach remembered me. Like, I knew he would, but I just didn't think I would get a reception of like, he stood up and shook my hand, a big hug, and like it was just yesterday I was playing on the football field with him. So I just came today to give my piece. I know you guys have other issues, and no disrespect to the job that you guys do, because I know you guys are busy and have things to do, but this topic for us means something in the bottom of our hearts to change that field name. Because no one that I know in this community, as far as a football field, deserves the name on the football field more than him in Portage, Michigan. That's just my opinion, and I think that goes for many other young men and other people in the community that are going to speak on his behalf probably moving forward. So I would just ask, find a committee or find whatever needs to be done within your agenda or whatever, your busy schedules, to maybe put that somewhere in there to get that accomplished for all, because it would mean the world to all of us. So hopefully that can be something that you guys really consider and not just take our words as we're just coming in here trying to waste your time or bully you into doing it, but we really mean this. Like, we really mean that that stadium needs to be a man who, I'll say it again, deserved to have his name on it. And honor, it would be an honor for all of us to walk out there one day, if you guys decide to change that name, to walk out there and really, I guess, see the field for the first time when his name is up there in honor of him. So I would really hope that you guys consider to possibly do that and not have it drag on forever because it really means a lot to all of us. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ed. Our next speaker is Ryan Freeland.
Good evening, board. Dr. Ryan Freeland, good to see you again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, congratulations to both schools, Portage Northern and Portage Central, on good football seasons. Congratulations in particular to Portage Northern, who qualified for the playoffs. Good luck playing Byron Center. I know they're a tough team. So for the record, I'm from, and I live in Grand Rapids. My address for the record is 1 Ionia Avenue, Southwest. I'll keep my comments brief tonight. I know it's already been a long night, but a few questions that still exist in the minds of those of us who've been working at your behest to get this done. First of all, as you guys know, I have worked tirelessly on the proposal, on the committee, and I would like to assert here now that it is our firm belief that our committee is legitimate, as is our proposal. The primary questions I have tonight are three. Essentially, number one, why is the board continuing to maneuver to illegitimize our committee and the comprehensive, quote, turnkey, end quote, proposal that was previously acknowledged rather than move our proposal to action? Question or issue number two. What more needs to change regarding recently updated policy 7250, commemoration and naming of school facilities, which opens with the statement, quote, the Board of Education has complete authority and responsibility for the naming and signage of facilities. The Board of Education has complete authority and responsibility for the naming and signage of facilities. What more needs to change? Three, with the board's current plan to revisit the commemoration policy 7250 in November, a timeframe that already represents several delays, including 5 months after proposal submission, 11 months after the same policy was already revised in December 2021, and 13 months after the board asserted to work as quickly as possible through this process. See board minutes 25 October 2021. My question becomes, when should we expect the board to bring our proposal to a vote? Concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Our next speaker is Kimberly Larson.
Can I go beforehand? She's not on the football stuff, right?
I was going to talk about it,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
I'm not part of the committee, so it's totally up to you.
I will wrap up the football stuff. It's up to you guys.
So I was going to speak a little bit about, very similar to what Dr. Freeland mentioned here. This was brought up 13 months ago, and then the policy changed. And then I sat here in September and heard Mr. Van Antwerp say that the policy wasn't clear. And I look at the policy and, we've talked, the mention that the Board of Education has complete authority. And then there's some criteria. Contributions and good character of the person are well documented and acknowledged within the community. I think that's rather well established. Person must be deceased or no longer employed by or have any current formal association with the district. Well, we got that. The board may commemorate a facility by naming it after something other than a person, or provide the name is relevant to the facility, meaningful to the community, and consistent with community standards. That doesn't apply because we're talking about a person. And so basically, we have the criteria to name this, especially when you look at the proposal that says that we can include McCamley, and I'm rather partial to the name McCamley, and I graduated on the field. I grew up with McCamley Field. But to be able to honor Bob Knight and Mr. McCamley, it seems like a no-brainer, which is, another point, that was the phrase used when we named a portion of the cross-country course after Coach Hosler, who is was well-deserving, or the media center after a principal. Again, probably well-deserving, I don't know her. Proposal include a statue, and well, that's kind of raising a precedent, right? Except that we have Lindsay Tarpley just a little bit to the west from the football field. And though she is a gold medalist, which is a big deal, did she really impact the lives of Portage students the way that Coach Knight did? And I don't know. And honestly, as I look at this, I realize that, the board changed the policy after the proposal was initially made, and yet says we need to change the policy again. And the only thing I can figure is that the board is doing this in order to avoid doing a vote by changing the policy to make it so they don't need to make a vote, because then the policy will say we can't do it. And that just seems disingenuous, not really leadership. I want to finish by saying Coach Knight, for me, he is the only person, and I lettered at Central, he is the only person that was always known as coach. My own coach, when she taught classes, was not known as coach. I didn't call her coach in any situation other than on the team. When I was in class, she was not coach. Coach Knight was, and he was to the entire school. So when I sat in the hallway waiting for band after lunch, and Coach Knight walked by, he knew us, even though we weren't on the team. When I went to college, keeping in mind, I grew up in a very non-athletic family. I didn't understand football. I went to college, university at Michigan Tech, and was kind of surprised because doesn't the defense score points regularly? I mean, what do you mean defense doesn't score points? They did back in high school. Oh, that's because of Coach Knight. Because he got all the players to do their best. And so when they did the kickoff to the defense wouldn't score. I mean, the goal is to get as far as possible down the field, right? Coach did that. But he treated all the students with respect, not just his teammates. He treated the players? There we go. See, I don't have the terminology. Wasn't a football person. But he treated them that way. He also treated everybody else that way. Such that when Coach McLuhan showed up at my door a few years ago, he remembered me because of the impact that Coach Knight had. That went on to Coach McLuhan, who then knew me by name, knew my sisters, knew her family. That says a lot. I was only on the track team 1 year. That was the only time that he had me as a coach. So please, stop avoiding. It's your right to vote yes or no. Vote.
Thank you, Kimberly. Our last speaker is Rick Grosser.
Thank you very much. Rick Grosser, 4321 Monterey Pine, Portage, Michigan. And again, now you've got Frank here to blame. He was one of my teachers. So when I screw up, blame him. So you guys have now had, about 11 months of this, getting the Bob Knight education, learning. So whoever didn't know him, I guess you guys are getting a pretty good education, getting a pretty good understanding of who he was and what he's about. My purpose here is being the last speaker here. I wanted to bring a couple things out. First thing, we want to get, as we're rolling closer to the November date that we've been aware of, that the policy is going to change and you guys are going to have that in front of you, and then some decisions are going to need to be made on your end. Obviously, we don't know what that is. We don't know where that is. So again, going back to the committee, we would like to form the committee again. We'd like to, or however you guys want to state that, we would like to form a committee because a decision's got to be made. And we put the proposal in front of you guys, our proposal. Obviously, you guys have got to look at that. We've got to look at that. Everybody's got to look at that and come up with an idea. Come up with the group. We want to be a part of that. We want to work with you guys. We want to be a part of that. So having a committee together of our guys and your guys, or whoever you guys come up with, we would like to form that committee, bond that together, because that's going to take time. And hear what this board's plan is, what if there's a plan or what there's a plan, negotiate, talk, go over that. So that we would like to move forward with and find out if that's something in the works, or have an idea, if that's something, even an idea, what the board thinks, if they can talk about that tonight. If they can just say, hey, maybe that's an idea. We can cool some tempers with that. We can just, to get something moving, to get to the community, to say, because I mean, we get the fact that the policy had to be changed. We understand that. But it sounds like it's moving to the place of the policy is going to be changed. So let's talk. Just keep the lines of communication open and talking about it. And if we could also move to, if we can go to the reporting stage of the board meeting so we can have some more time to we're not having enough time to talk. Or I don't know the way your guys is how we fit in these meetings, but we need more time to report back. Because it sounds like once we get this, we're gonna need to sit down and talk to you guys. We need to have more meetings to sit down and talk, to hammer these details out. Do you agree or disagree? I don't know. Do you understand what I'm asking? You guys are all looking at me like I'm a deer in headlights right now.
We promised the community we would have our policy complete next month.
Okay.
And we're on track to do that. That's what we promised the community, and that's what we're gonna deliver on.
Okay. Well,
We'll see what happens from there. That's all I can tell you tonight, because the board hasn't approved the policy.
Okay, well, that's disconcerting, because the community thinks it's something different. And that's what's been voiced to us. They think that the majority of the community thinks that the policy in November that's gonna be changed is looking forward to saying, it's an opening the door to saying that that's opening for talks to do that. Not just a policy that's saying, well, the policy's changed and we don't know what's gonna happen next. And that scares the community. And we're not in any way throwing out threats or anything else, or anything like that. But what I don't want the community thinking wrong thoughts. So I don't know how to correct.
We communicated to the community via the district extra that we're working on the policy and we're gonna have it next month. Right now, we're on track to do it, Greg.
I understand what you're saying, but they got misdirected from that. They assumed, the community assumed that was something totally different.
Well, it is what we
Okay.
say it is,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Appreciate it, thank you.
You bet. Any comments from trustees this evening?
I can go, Randy, because as we get speakers up there, it's not the board's norm to create dialogue, because board meetings would get out of hand if all board members started. So Randy speaks for us, but now this is my time, so I can tell everybody how I feel. So I'm really mixed. I mean, everybody knows, you should know I'm probably the biggest supporter up here of Coach Knight. Coach Knight touched my life, and I didn't play for Coach Knight. I get emotional when I talk about Coach Knight. I tear up. For some reason, the good Lord takes some really good people out of our lives, and I struggle. I've had a very personal, close experience in my life, and really good people leave this world. And I struggled with it, and I learned all about free will, and that helped me deal with it. But this is really close to me, because somebody else who's really close to my life was a wonderful person and touched a lot of really good lives. And I would say a lot of those things went parallel. So I do get, I do feel this, okay? And I am supportive. This is the world according to me, and I'm gonna be lengthy. I apologize to my board members. I look at the history, Dr. Freeland came to us and addressed the board in October, and we had some dialogue about it. The board set a charge to review the policy, because we were talking about statutes in which we did, and we approved a policy in December. The board, I think unanimously agreed that Coach Knight and his virtues should be commemorated in some major way. The board, but at that same meeting, the board expressed concerns about renaming. So that's the key word here, renaming. Now, not to say we won't, but we expressed concerns with that. And then the board did express thoughts on having a committee, but never fully went through it. So in December, we did come up with a policy. We expanded the definitions of facilities, and we allowed monuments, because that was one of the things that we knew people wanted. But the policy, unfortunately, did not address renaming. In June, late June, we got a very thorough, excellent proposal from a committee to commemorate Coach Knight. by renaming McCamley Field. We received the proposal in late June. We had discussions in late July. Like I said, this is just my history according to how I see it. And Dr. Freeland did a wonderful job. And the committee, like I said, was a great proposal. Unfortunately, the proposal made a recommendation contrary to the board's concerns in October. So that's, I think, in my opinion, that's one of the areas where the board is struggling, because we never really had that discussion. And so I feel like the board is struggling. I personally would love to do something major. Maybe it is renaming. Maybe it's Coach Knight Stadium. I don't know. I'm not, or maybe, like I said, maybe it is renaming. What I don't appreciate is the shenanigans on Facebook. Hostler Hill, we named a hill on the cross-country course, Haas Hill. We did not name a course, cross-country course, and you guys are throwing misinformation out there, which I don't like. So you're turning me off, okay? There's things being said that are just, they're taking words out of context, which is just dirty. There's all kinds of dirty work going on. And we say Coach Knight, would want you to keep working hard, but he wouldn't want you to be fighting dirty. He wouldn't want you twisting the quarterback's ankle under the pile. And that's what I see going on. And I, for one, don't appreciate it. And it turns me off. And it saddens me at the same time, because we're taking a wonderful person and playing this game. And somebody said on the post, Coach Knight is smiling down on us as he witnesses the selfless teamwork that has taken shape to push this forward. And I doubt Coach Knight is smiling down with regards to some of these brutal tactics. I highly doubt it. I don't know. I'm just kind of embarrassed for the people who signed their names on the committee. Just want to be clear. I'm supportive of moving forward somehow. The committee, we have in our policy that everybody refers to in their Facebook post. It also refers to the committee, what it looks like. It's supposed to be a central office administrator, which would be the site administrator, 2 parents for the attendance zone, an at-large community member, 1 board member, and 1 student, and this committee is to be chaired by the superintendent or a designee. It's very clear in our policies that that's what that committee looks like, and maybe we will have a committee to address this, and I hope this board does. But that's not what happened. I mean, I can appreciate you guys had a wonderful report. I think you tainted it with some of your actions. It's frankly embarrassing. That said, I mean, it could just be a few people. That said, I really would wish, hopefully this board can move forward on it. I'm very appreciative of the passion. I'm thankful for Randy. He's been taking it on the chin, but his keen ability to keep us disciplined and keep us grounded in making these decisions. We want to make the right decision. We don't want somebody, say, there to be any issues. And Randy, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, I know I can be a pain in your hind, probably one of the biggest ones here, but I do appreciate you, and I do appreciate the committee, but I just wish, all the politics and silliness would stop, because it's just not professional, and I know there's some very good and professional people involved here, and we're all passionate. Coach Knight is probably the most deserving person in this community. Most deserving person in this community, but we need to honor him through the process as well. Honor him, and more than honoring Coach Knight, I mean, we need to honor his virtues. His virtues were the most important thing in what he taught kids. And so I don't think we're honoring Coach Knight's virtues with the process we're using. So I'm sorry, the board does not create dialogue. I've had a lot of these feelings for meetings, but usually somebody gets up and talks and everybody leaves. So nobody's here to listen to me. So this is the world according to Rusty. I'm very passionate about good people, and like I said, I get very emotional when I talk about Coach Knight, and I still have my 5th of Jack Daniels that he gave me when we were going through one of our tough times, and he showed up in my office and said, Rusty, don't know if you drink Jack Daniels, but you probably need some. But wonderful man, and thank you for everybody's efforts, and I hope we can move forward. And once again, thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Rusty.
And sorry for taking everybody's time.
I just wanted to just add in, I understand the passion, I get it. I had an opportunity to work with Coach Knight for 2 years, and believe me, when you are an assistant principal, you do have some contact with athletes. And I can say 100% he was on my side, not just on my side, but he was on the right side. If a student did not step up to the plate, he put them on the plate and delivered them to me. So I will, I know the passion. I could not have gotten a better first experience as an administrator without some of the things that we talked about offline. So I get the passion, I get it. I just want us to do it the right way, and I want it to be able to be able to stand. Because, 50 years from now, who knows? It might be somebody else who's done something. Then you're gonna move another name. I just wanted to have some teeth once we get it in place, whatever that might be. Because we don't want it to be a revolving door. I mean, there are a lot of good people. But there's no doubt that something has to be done for Coach Knight. My question is, what does that look like that will have longevity?
Thank you, Celeste.
Can I just one sort of thing is we have time. Obviously, the football season's over.
Yeah.
And we didn't, so we've got a lot of time. I mean, I kind of thought this thing was dead until June we got the proposal, because we didn't, I don't know who fell down on this, but the board didn't have any more communication after our December change of policy. But we have time, and I think there's something big could happen for that, before that kickoff. Portage Central's first home game. There's lots of time, to fix this and do something good. It just has to have real mature dialogue.
And I'll just say that I agree with that, and I think as we've already said here, my sense is it's 100% support that something needs to be done for Coach Knight. So all the pleas for his wonderful virtues are great. It's nice to hear those every time. There's no doubt about that, though. So I just want to make sure that's clear from my perspective.
I would agree with that too, and I think it was very clear last October that all of us supported honoring Coach Knight in some fashion. I also would like to comment that although most of us have children or ourselves attended Portage Northern, we represent this entire community, not just one school. So please keep that in mind. We're not north or south or west or central or north. We are for this whole community's children and citizens.
Anyone else?
Well, Randy, I'd just say a few words. And I do appreciate the passion that comes from the folks who played for Coach Knight and who were taught by him. Love it. Randy, at the same time, I appreciate your kind of discipline in moving through this. As a member of the policy committee, we've had a number of discussions. We meet tomorrow morning. My sense is we got to birth this baby, and just kind of get this thing done. And hey, so a number of people have approached me, and in those discussions, it doesn't take long to figure out a good solution to this. And I'm not, I don't know whether that is going to be the specific solution in the end, but there are good solutions that I think, and I'll go back to what I think to a person we said a year ago. It's got to figure out to honor Coach Knight and do that in a way that does not denigrate the McCandley name. And, I mean, because we're kind of the stewards. We're kind of the stewards of the old stuff. We're kind of the institutional people in this whole thing and trying to find the right balance. So I look forward to our meeting tomorrow morning. And, I mean, I think what we're going to do is in 2 weeks, we're gonna walk into this room with some real stuff for a conversation and then action at the meeting after that. So, anyway, that's my sense of it. I sense we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there within a month.
And Bo, I'd like to comment on your passion, your guys' passion really. You know, football's a passionate game, and you guys have all been blessed to have a passionate coach. And I understand football really well, and I understand how you have this affinity for your coach, and I appreciate that. You know, I played, all the high school and all of college. I had 3 sons that played on the north side of town, played 4 years, they played 12 years of college football between the 3 of them. And so I understand you have to have passion. You guys represented your passion very well tonight, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for your comments tonight. We appreciate it. You might be frustrated with the timing here, but one thing that has allowed us to do to learn more about Coach Knight. I attended his memorial service because I didn't know a lot about Coach Knight. I'd only met him once, and Frank, you made a speech there, and I learned that you came down from Muskegon with him, and everyone who's come has had another story about how he's impacted their lives, and those are good things to know. He was obviously a really special person. So thank you for your comments again tonight, and we'll keep our promise that we made to the community next month. So we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Do we have any board committee reports? I don't think we do. Okay, we can move to our consent agenda, and we've got 5 items on the consent agenda tonight. The first is approval of the minutes from the October 10, 2022 Committee of the Whole work session. The next 4 items have all been reviewed by the board, some at our last meeting. The second item is that the Board of Education approved $595,329 for a parking lot at the Northern Athletic Events Facility, and approve as part of this budget to award a contract of $259,900 to Lounsbury Excavation Incorporated. The total request amount will come from the Building and Site Sinking Fund. The third item tonight on the consent agenda is that the Board of Education approve $1,433,441 for the curtain wall at Northern High School, and approve as part of this budget to award a contract of $1,160,320 to Reliable Glass Installers. The total requested amount will come from the Building and Site Sinking Fund. The fourth item is that the Board of Education approve $115,631 for irrigation at Centennial Park on the campus of Central High and Central Middle School. A total purchase cost will come from the Building and Site Sinking Fund. Finally, that the Board of Education approve $154,514 for divider curtains at the doghouse and stable. The total requested amount will come from the 2019 Bond Fund, Construction Fund Number 1, unallocated contingency. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented tonight?
Randy, I'd just like to make a comment, no exceptions obviously, but to the community, it sounds like we're spending a lot of money and there's not a lot of discussion, and I just want to remind everybody that we discussed all this at our last meeting and had presentations. The board didn't have problems with it. So if we did have a problem with one of these, we would remove it from the consent agenda and more talk. But it's just sometimes I think when we review this, Randy, and you go over that, people think we've never talked about it. And that sounds like a lot of money. So I just want to remind the community that the consent agenda has all been discussed at the previous meetings.
And some of these items even before that.
Right.
They've been on the list for
So I don't think we talk about that enough and people understand it. So.
Right, we're just blowing through money here, yeah? Yeah, okay. With that,
Rusty, it's funny, because I look at these things and I think, have we already approved these things?
Yeah.
We've talked about
We talked about so much.
So.
While not hearing any exceptions, all these consent agenda items are approved as requested, and we've reached the end of our agenda, and we're adjourned. Thank you.